To order, please. I'm joined by Jose Huizar, Gil Cedillo, and Nuri Martinez, and Paul Krikorian has joined us. I'm Curran Price, Chair, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all here this afternoon. As usual, we have an action-packed agenda. We're going to move item 3 on consent. There's no objection.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, could you repeat that?
We're going to move item 3 on consent.
Thank you.
We'll have an opportunity for public testimony. If you choose to comment on anything before us, you should fill out a card, and we will give you an opportunity to state your piece. So we'll move item 3 on consent, and we will take up items 1 and 2 together.
Item number 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Mr. Majib Siddiqui to the Los Angeles Convention Center and Exhibition Authority Commission for the term ending January 16, 2017. Item number 2 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Cheryl Turner to the Los Angeles Convention Center and Exhibition Authority Commission for the term ending January 16, 2015.
Okay, Mr. Siddiqui and Ms. Turner, we're happy to have you both before us today. We're excited that the mayor has selected you to serve on a very important body, the Convention Center and Exhibition Authority Commission. And so why don't you both tell us a little bit about yourselves and why you want to serve and what you think some of the critical issues are. Why don't we take ladies first? Attorney Turner.
Thank you, Councilmember Price. I'm a native of Los Angeles. I attended the public school system of LA Unified School, and I recall that the first job I ever had was working for the city of Los Angeles as a city lifeguard. Those bring back great memories. I actually taught swim classes over at Exposition Park, and I was a coach, synchronized swimming coach. I graduated from high school with honors. I played the violin in the orchestra. I ran track. I'm going to try to speed it up because I know it's quite a history.
Give us the short version.
The short version. I was offered a scholarship to attend USC. I studied international relations and psychology there. I also graduated there with honors.
I'm told. Quite honest.
All right. USC again offered me a scholarship to attend the law school. So I am an attorney by trade. And I always tried to balance running my law practice, which I am the managing member of, and staying involved in my community. I serve in the neighborhood association. I provided legal services to Legal Aid Clinic in the community, and I'm on various boards and trade organizations in the city.
But what in your background do you think gives you special skill or insight to serve on this body?
Well, as an attorney, and I don't mean to imply that I take the role of or replace the role of the city attorney or the county council of Los Angeles, but certainly as an attorney on the commission, I would be able to very easily review any contracts that are presented to the commission, review them, formulate opinions, and give opinions and ask questions as a commissioner. I have a background in real estate. I'm a former real estate broker, so to the extent that there are any issues related to acquisition of property, in order to expand the convention center, I have background in that area as well. I'm also involved in the construction industry, and to the extent that task orders or RFPs are presented or put together, I have not only reviewed them, but I have personally responded to RFPs in the construction industry. I also have a construction management certificate, and I think that all of those skills and experiences will be helpful and beneficial to my service on this commission as we begin to improve and expand our convention center.
Thank you. Mr. Siddiqui, would you care to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and the members of this committee, I am a migrant from Bangladesh, so I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Krikorian in a hearing before I had a master's degree in business back from home country, and a law degree, although I didn't practice law. Here, as a profession, I'm a linguist, and also I founded one non-profit organization to improve and develop the neighborhood that we got, which is called Little Bangladesh, and pretty much with the activism of the different issues, and I believe that I'll be able to contribute in a sense that a new perspective will be there. With my background, I'll be able to review the documents and bring my fair opinion, how I believe, and that will help to reach right decision that helps develop this city of Los Angeles.
Okay. And let me ask, what do you think the pressing issues, pressing opportunities before the convention center are as it looks at expanding or moving our city forward?
Excuse me, can you please rephrase the
Well, I
question?
just wondered what you feel the critical issues are as we talk about expanding our convention center, moving our city forward. What do you consider important issues we should consider in that expansion?
On the expansion issue, I haven't given a thought about it, Honorable Chair. At some later time, if you'd like to have my opinion, I'll be pleased to come here before this committee and give my opinion.
Okay, well, thank you for your honesty and for your willingness to step up, because many don't do that, so we appreciate it. Members, do we have any questions or any of the... Okay, well, again, thank you both for coming before this committee. I think there's no doubt that we are going to recommend your appointment without any hesitation and any reluctance. I understand you're going to be on the agenda tomorrow, so I'll invite you to come back to the council meeting for final confirmation of the entire body.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for your service and your willingness to serve.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Going back to item number 3, the CAO wanted to report that they have a technical correction to their recommendations. In their report, it's recommendations number 2Y and recommendation number 2Z, and they made slight change to the language, copy of which has been distributed to the committee and has been included in the public record.
Okay, so we will approve as amended.
Thank
you. Great. Okay, let us move on to item 4.
Item number 4 is a CLA report relative to economic development incentive policy for hotels.
We have a report from the...
Good afternoon,
LA?
council members. John Wickham with the Chief Legislative Analyst. Before you is a follow-up report to an action, a report that you had heard back in August 2013 on a proposal for creating a citywide economic incentive program to help construct new hotels in the city. During that hearing, your committee requested that we follow up on a number of questions. This report before you is the follow-up on the questions that were asked at the committee. We had some additional analysis prepared by our consultant, PKF Consulting, to evaluate those questions, and we also obtained an additional peer review of the CSL report just to make sure that we had an independent look at this whole policy, make sure that we covered all the bases, and we saw, try to identify any subtleties that might come up. One key additional data point that we have in the report that PKF determined is that since 1988, average hotel room construction nationally has been at 1.8%. In Los Angeles, that average rate has been 0.7%. So we're far behind on the national average in the construction of new hotel rooms. So again, it points up the things that we have seen already in different ways, that there's a shortage of hotel rooms in the city, and we need some way to address that. In addition, the report includes several graphics that had been prepared by Convention Sports and Leisure for the Tourism Board. In those graphics, it shows the number of hotel rooms within a walking distance of convention centers in Los Angeles, San Diego, Anaheim, and San Francisco. And then it also shows three examples of conventions that actually are placed in the city of Los Angeles that occur in our convention center, and the number of hotel rooms and the location of those hotels to meet the demand, and then compares what it would take to meet that demand in our competitor cities. And really, you see the stark difference between our convention center and the convention centers in those other cities. For some of our major conventions, you need to find hotels that are 3, 4, 5 miles away from our convention center in order to meet their demand. And that requires expensive shuttling services that the tourism board pays for in order to help facilitate that convention. It, obviously adds traffic, it adds time, very serious concerns in the way we're serving our convention business. And so that's backdrop to the first of 3 significant policy points that we've identified and discussed in our report. There are a lot of policy points in the policy that's in front of you, but there were 3 significant issues that we grappled with in finalizing this and putting this forward to you. And the first is the incentive zone at the convention center and how to balance that out with the other incentives offered in citywide and in the downtown area, et cetera. We really need to get some big hotels built immediately adjacent to the convention center. That's a significant need to meet our business needs for the convention center. We need a couple 1,000-room hotels within walking distance of the center. And so the highest incentive rate that's provided in the policy is for construction of hotel rooms in the convention center zone. And the rest of the policy flows from there and steps down the incentives that are offered in several other targeted areas, and then steps down from there for the citywide policy. And the intent here is to really provide motivation and incentive for hotel developers to focus on that convention center zone and get the units, the rooms that we need to meet our business needs, and then to flow out from there. So, as I say, we grappled with that. I spoke to, obviously, PKF. I spoke to CSL International. I spoke to the Tourism Board, the Convention Center, several other consultants who specialize in convention, in hotel developments and conventions, to really try and grapple with this issue. The second issue of concern that we were grappling with relates to renovation, a renovation program. We've never done a renovation program in this incentive approach. So we don't have any data to back up how that would be structured, what the most relevant issues are to identify and to discuss and bring forward. And so in the PKF study, they outlined an approach, but our concern is that we don't have any real-world experience in negotiating one of those deals. And I didn't want to recommend to you a citywide policy on renovations until we had some experience. So what we've actually added in here is the LAX Century Boulevard corridor as a rehabilitation policy area that provides an opportunity to start exploring and negotiating those kinds of deals, and then will allow, once we have some experience at that, we can come back to you with citywide approaches on renovations. The third area that was really a significant matter for us that we struggled with relates to the very small hotels, as somebody on the committee said, the no-tell motels. And what we don't have a lot of data on those hotels either. I think what we're seeing is the remnants of historical patterns in those hotels. For example, Colorado Boulevard through Eagle Rock was a former route of the Route 66. And that was in a day when people would drive all day long and they'd stop at a roadside motel and then they'd drive onto the next roadside motel. And there are remnants of those little family-operated hotels throughout the city, most notably on San Fernando Road in Ms. Martinez's district, for example, Van Nuys Boulevard, Colorado Boulevard, other sets of the city. But they're very small, 20 rooms, 30 rooms, 50 rooms. And it may be that the most effective way to deal with this is to start analyzing the land uses for those hotels, really find out where they are, and find out whether it's appropriate for even to have hotel uses in those communities anymore. It may be that it would be more appropriate for them to transition to residential in some neighborhoods, or on San Fernando Road to transfer those to light manufacturing. But we don't know the details without the data, and it would be appropriate for the planning department to do a focus study on that issue and to come back with some recommendations on meaningful ways to deal with those from a land use perspective and see what kind of land use tools we could have to bring to bear. In the meantime, I think that there's probably some significant and important enforcement issues that can also be used to immediately address those problems, because there are issues related to law enforcement that are significant in those small hotels, and that would be another way to address, to make the inappropriate behaviors that are happening in those places difficult to continue. And that might also help people find another way out of those businesses to a more appropriate use for those communities. Since the report has come out, there have been a number of editors who have been taking a look at the report, and a lot of comments that have come forward that have been helpful, and I would recommend to you these immediate revisions and edits to the report. The first is that the Convention and Tourism Development Department has requested that they would be included in the Oversight Committee as well, and that they be included in the instruction related to reviewing land use and zoning constraints. And so we would recommend that you include that department in those two recommendations, recommendations 3 and 5. In addition, there are 2 edits in the policy itself included in Appendix C that ought to be made. The first is that in the downtown adaptive reuse incentive area, I failed to include a star rating requirement there. They should be a minimum of 3-star hotels in order to qualify, and that makes sure that we are getting quality hotels for the city. And then in the LAX hotel renovation incentive area, it should be 50% of net new TOT collections. Those are operating hotels. They're currently generating TOT. We don't want to give them credit for having already been in business. The idea is that they would be generating new TOT, and that is what we would be using in the incentive to help them with their renovations. So those are some immediate amendments, and I know that there have been some discussions on other approaches here.
Great. Care to add anything to that?
Pardon me?
Do you care to add anything to that?
No, just to confirm it. In terms of, and just to put it in perspective also. Pardon me?
Introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Bruce Balton with PKF Consulting. And we thank you for the ability to work on this report and with John and his staff for over the last several years. Just to confirm a couple things that John mentioned, one in terms of the number of hotel rooms in LA at the convention center compared to other cities, we are markedly short, as is obvious from that. And that impact has resulted in a reduced number of room nights generated by the convention center compared to other destinations. We've analyzed numerous times the basically room nights generated by the LA Convention Center compared to San Francisco, Anaheim, and San Diego. And while we're not that far below Anaheim, we're well below San Diego and San Francisco. And the issue really is number of rooms. There's some issue with the convention center condition with West Hall. But that's a lesser issue, frankly, than the number of hotel rooms. And the rapid absorption of the JW Marriott and Ritz-Carlton has proved that basically the demand is there if we can get the hotel rooms. They came online in 2010, which is one of the worst recessions we've ever had, and were fully absorbed into the market in the first 10 months of operation, both of them, which is very, very fast, and showed the demand for Los Angeles as a convention destination. If we have the rooms and the ability to hold those conventions.
So your response to questions about the rationale for 450 at the downtown level, 450 in terms of room minimums, not 550, not 350. How do you justify 450?
Yeah, that's the critical point that we wrestled with. The concern is that in the convention center area, there's not a lot of development opportunity left. The Fig Central parcel is entitled and ready to go with construction. They're building a 200-room hotel and no more. The Fig South parcel is entitled and ready to go forward with residential. There's no hotel unit. There are no hotel units in there whatsoever. The other proposals that have been identified are generating hotels in the 300, 350 range. So we're rapidly losing development opportunities. So the idea is if we're going to be using our incentives, our city revenues to drive construction of hotels that meet our city needs, we need to define the incentive in a way that's going to encourage the larger development in that area. Going with a lower room limit will get us a lot of little hotels, but you're going to need 10, 20 of those little hotels to meet a number of hotel rooms equivalent to what's happening in San Diego. And having a larger number in the incentive will hopefully drive those developers who are willing to do a bigger hotel to come into this area and get that work done. This is that balance that I was seeing, and we had a number of people, for example, Bruce, he looked at that 0.7 number and said, we need to build hotel rooms, and let's do what we can to get to that. And then CSL in the peer review came in and said, that's important. However, this concern about getting your very large hotels with 1,000 rooms is a significant policy decision and affects your business at your convention center. And we fear that you might be watering down the market by incentivizing too many small hotels too fast. And so the policy presented to you in our report takes the more conservative approach there in making sure that we address the need for our convention center before we move on to the bigger issue. We still have a citywide policy. We still have a policy for the broader downtown area, for Hollywood, for North Hollywood, all of which will serve downtown via the Red Line, for example. But we're trying to really focus the best incentives on the largest room hotels in the convention center area.
And to add to that, Mr. Price, 450 is basically a pretty good-sized hotel. It's considered to be a large hotel. There are relatively few hotels developed at a room count of 450 rooms or higher. So you're in that range of being a significant hotel, yet still small enough at 450 that it's a manageable development opportunity if you don't get the 1,000-room hotel. So it's kind of, again, walking that line of getting one or more significant hotels, but still having the opportunity to really get the hotels, because that's the critical part as well. For incentive policy to work, it has to work.
Okay. Well, members, we had several cards. Let me take the cards and then we can come back and follow up with some questions. Okay, gentlemen, thank you. If you can just stay tuned. Don't go too far. We've got Reginald McDowell, Carol Schatz, Frank Lopez, Deborah Kuttner, and Ron Miller, in that order.
Yeah, he called you first. Me?
He's deferring to you. So.
Carol Schatz, President of Central City Association. We support the need for a comprehensive policy, and we commend the CLA for a thoughtful policy, and we concur with most of the recommendations in the report. We support the 1/2 mile radius convention center zone, but we do not believe that the zone should preclude smaller hotels, what you were just talking about, that would otherwise qualify elsewhere in downtown, and PKF's recommendation in the report was to set the threshold at 300 rooms. Not every location in that zone can actually accommodate a 450-room hotel, so we think that the incentive area should be amended to include the LACC incentive area north of the 10 and east of the 110. Additionally, we didn't have a lot of time to broach this with others, but we believe that you must give teeth to these incentives in order to attract the large high-rise hotels that you were just talking about as well. For hotels with 450 rooms or more, the city should provide 100% of TOT and 20% of new site-specific net revenue. Further, for hotels with 700 rooms or more, the city should use an incentive of 100% TOT, 35% of new site-specific net revenue, and waive the $5 per square foot of TFAR payments that's currently required. It's costly to build these hotels. These subsidies are necessary, and we think this would help you achieve your goal of getting the larger hotels. We oppose the card check neutrality provision. We are astonished to see this suggested as a community benefit when it benefits a special interest and a special interest alone. We ask you to remove that from the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mr. McDowell.
Chairman Price, honorable members, my name is Reginald McDowell, and I'm representing the Hotel Association of Los Angeles. Just by way of background, I have 40 years experience working in the hotel industry as general manager in 6 hotels in the U.S. and Canada, and vice president of operations for interstate hotels based here, and I've been in LA the last 20 years. I'm here to support the Chief Legislative Analyst's report and the PKF study regarding establishing economic development incentive policy for hotel development in Los Angeles. The report confirms LA needs additional hotel rooms, 8,000 in downtown alone, just to attract citywide conventions to LA. In addition, the report discusses need for hotel rooms throughout the city. However, it is critical to point out the nexus between our city's need for new hotel rooms and the current minimum wage proposal for larger hotels in LA. There's a cause and effect for every hotel-related policy that is instituted by the City of Los Angeles. Nothing happens in a vacuum. We cannot on one hand implement the highest minimum wage in the country on just one industry, then question why new hotels aren't coming to LA, or at least why they aren't coming without significant tax breaks and public subsidies. The Hotel Association of Los Angeles supports a fair, sensible economic subsidies for hotel developments in the city. We believe that it can be helpful to the city and industry. However, we must be fair to the existing hotels in our city who have been paying hundreds of millions of dollars in TOT funds over the years, who have served as pillars in the local tourism industry through all the ups and downs of the economy. The economic development incentive policy of hotels needs to be a part of a larger discussion regarding hotel-related issues. There are critical decisions impacting thousands of local jobs and tens of millions of dollars in economic activity. Our hotels employ thousands of workers, and we pay fair share of taxes. We serve as an anchor for the tourism in Los Angeles. We are good corporate citizens. We want to be your partners. Thank you for taking time to explore options to incentivize new hotel development in LA.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Frank.
Good afternoon, council members. Frank Lopez, Director of Public Policy for the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber applauds the City's Council's efforts to create a comprehensive and impactful incentive policy to bring greater hotel development to Los Angeles. We must raise a serious concern regarding one of these base requirements in the current policy proposal for any product to be considered for incentives, and that requirement is card check neutrality. Card check neutrality is an undemocratic process that takes the power away from employees to vote to decide if they want to unionize. Card check neutrality does not protect the worker as traditional NLRB election does by ensuring a secret ballot. Many employees are often misled in signing these authorization cards, told that they're merely health insurance enrollment forms, non-binding statements of interest, requests for an election, or even tax forms. There are no protections for the workers in this process to ensure that workers are not misled or intimidated. The LA Chamber of Commerce and business community at large do not believe that the City of LA should be jeopardizing the rights of workers to pave the way for unions to force collective bargaining on hotels. We respectfully ask that the City Council remove this provision before finalizing the economic incentive policy for hotel development. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments? And finally, I'm sorry, not finally. This is
Deborah Cantor.
Deborah Cantor.
I'm Deborah Cantor. I'm the General Counsel for the Broad Foundations, and I'm overseeing the development and construction of the Broad Contemporary Art Museum. Thank you, Chairman Price and council members, for letting me speak. Mr. Broad wanted to be here today, and he's traveling and was unable to change his travel plans, so he's asked me to read a statement from him. I was the founding chairman of the Grand Avenue Committee when it was formed in 2001 and was involved in the earliest conversations between the city and county concerning the development of Grand Avenue back in 1999. The City Council and County Board of Supervisors had the foresight to recognize the potential of an integrated residential, retail, and civic development to bring together this region in a vibrant city center in the heart of downtown Los Angeles.
Excuse me, not to interrupt. I think you want to talk about item 6. Is that correct?
For item 4? I'm sorry. I was told that this was the item for the TOT tax.
This is the overall
There's two of them.
policy,
There are two,
not
yeah.
the specific
The
item
specific-
related to grants.
Excuse me.
No,
Thank you.
that's fine.
I apologize.
We'll call you back. We'll call you back. Before you leave, before you three leave, let me ask my colleagues if you have any questions of these.
No, we're going to, is there any more public comment, or?
One more, Mr. Miller. I'm just trying to get this panel. There.
I don't know. I'm not promising.
We're on item 4.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Miller, Executive Secretary of the LA Orange County Building and Construction Trades Council. So we've got a short chance to look at this policy, and I would like to indulge you guys to not act on it today, but take a little time and digest it. While we do agree with numerous points in the policy, we think the 450 room number is a little large, and so I would like to see you guys take it back and give you a chance to look at it and study it a little more. It's a good policy. There's many good points, but I don't think we should react so fast to it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We obviously are trying to craft a policy that's going to be fair and balanced and well balanced. And certainly there are still some details to tighten up and some things to tweak. And I'm confident we'll be able to do that. But let me defer to my members and see if we've got any questions. We'll start with Mr. Weezar.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the work that's been gone on into this. And we see tremendous economic benefits should this policy move forward. And I'm pleased with the steps we're taking to develop a citywide program to create more hotels and jobs that would go with it. However, as I see, and also if we could get the our staff to come up, if you look at the overall tweaking that we're doing to our existing policy right now, I think that what we've done is we kept the top-tier hotels with the same policy, but the lower number of hotel rooms, second level of tier hotel rooms, we've lessened the incentives. And I think the thinking I'm making the assumption that the thinking that goes behind that was to incentivize larger hotels by reducing the number, the incentives for the lower number of hotel rooms. And that's kind of like the overall policy in what we're doing. Is that accurate or not?
It's close. There's a maximum incentive in city policy that's been in place for over 20 years, since the 90s, that we provide no more than 50% of net new revenue for economic development projects. So that's the outside threshold for these projects. Yeah. Whether it's been, whether it's had a hotel in it or not, that's been the city policy. And that's the policy that we've applied to the 5 hotel projects that have come forward on an independent basis so far. And 2 of those hotels have had 1,000 rooms and 900 rooms respectively. And 3 of the hotels have had 300 to 400 rooms. So using the policy as we have now, we've incentivized a range of hotels. And, but the idea was this concern that by incentivizing any hotel of just about any size in the convention center area, we run the risk of washing out the effect of building and getting a really big hotel immediately adjacent to the convention center.
Excellent. Now, you've given me 2 options in terms of policy paths that we could take. One is, as you propose, which is to keep the top tier the same, reduce the lower one so that we incentivize people to do the top one. You also said right now, well, we could not reduce them for all so that we really don't have the impact we want. Those are 2 options. But there's a third way of looking at it, which is why not do more than what we're doing now for the top tier or keep the lower tier the same or even expand those as well. We're not going in that direction. And I think that was really the intent of why we even started this direction, because what we have now is not really getting us the results we would like to see. We've incentivized some hotels, but not as many. So what I thought when we started this process was to see additional types of incentives, which I don't think we're going on that path. Is that an accurate assessment, or am I...
Well, in the past, we've required, for example, room block agreements in the hotels that we've incentivized, no matter what the size of those are. And for example, in this policy, we're eliminating that benefit as one of the components of the downtown incentive zone. So we're reducing some of the other demands that have been made on hotel developers. So that theoretically should be an assistance on the smaller side. There are, the CCA mentioned the TFAR transfer payment as an example of another incentive that might be brought to the table here, and that would be something that the council can consider. But from the very beginning, we never considered, and it was not my understanding that the council would change the 50% policy, but that's a council policy, and it would be up to the members to decide what they want to do with it.
Okay, because so far, like I said, just to reiterate, it seems like the proposal we got back is to keep the top tier rooms existing policy and the lower tiers, keep them smaller to try to incentivize largers. What I'd like to see is if we incentivize the top tier even more and probably keep the lower ones the same and not reduce them. That's another way of going, which I don't think we fully got that analysis as another option in terms of the direction we might want to go here. Is that...
If you provide that direction, then we would do that.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, I don't know, I just think there's further analysis to be done on this. I have some ideas I'd like to, after we hear from other council members, give some of those ideas so we could come back and they could fully analyze those. Doesn't mean we will go in that direction, but at least if we see that, because what I understand is the convention center to fully have, we're moving forward Plan B to expand the convention center, but we also need larger types of hotel rooms around there, 6, 7, 1,000 rooms. And the reason we want those is because the types of conventions that would book the convention center are those large block level types that they want the large number of hotels, and we don't have those. If we do this is for 5 years as currently proposed. I'm also thinking that we should take advantage of this economic upswing that we have right now, giving them a limited time, even 3 years, to look at this. And at the end of the day, we're only going to have 1 or 2 hotels that really get built through this policy in the larger tier. But I think we should really go in with large incentives, give them a limited time, and see what we catch out there. Because this time is going to go, this economic upswing is going to pass us by soon, and we got to just go as big as we can with the incentives, as quick as we can. And we're going to end up catching 1 or 2 at the end of the day anyway with whatever we have. But I think it increases our chances by being bigger and quicker and swifter. I have some ideas out. If we are going to continue this,
yeah, I think there's a consensus that we should continue it. I think we can do that. There are times of the essence, but we want to make sure we get it right, and I think there certainly is time to incorporate the ideas, suggestions that we've heard and from the dais as well.
Should I make them now, or should?
Why don't you hold them and then we'll do them at the end. Mr. Kokoria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly support the suggestion of considering Mr. Weezar's suggestions and other suggestions that we've heard today and otherwise in analyzing this further, I think it's a sensible direction to go in to try to reduce barriers of entry and increase the likelihood that hotel developers will make the decision to develop hotels, particularly around the convention center, but throughout Los Angeles. This is absolutely something that's in our economic interests to do, but we have to make sure that the specifics really matter in a policy like this, in making sure that we're not incentivizing things that don't need incentive, and that we're not acting in a way that's counterproductive to our larger policy goals. And in my view, the single most important thing in this policy is developing large hotels around the convention center. And that's, I mean, the only reason that I ended up supporting a questionable policy of building a football stadium downtown, and the reason that I questioned that throughout its long life, and the only reason that I finally relented and supported it was specifically for the reason of encouraging more development of the convention center and around the convention center because of the larger economic benefits that provides. So to me, that's the single most important thing about this. But as long as we have the representative of the Hotel Association here, and I thank you for coming and for your comments. Can you, I know you represent members now, large members, who have served our city very well for many years, don't get a penny of benefit from an incentive program like this, and may in fact suffer a competitive disadvantage when new hotels are built with an incentive package that allows them to offer potentially lower room rates than our incumbent hotels. I've heard that argument made by at least one of your prominent members. So if you could please identify for us, what are the barriers of entry for building new hotels? Because this whole discussion seems to revolve around, construction cost alone. I suspect there are other issues that are maybe our consultant can also aid, because I didn't see any discussion of this in your report. The assumption was simply made that we have a lower investment, we have a lower percentage of new rooms than other cities, and therefore we should offer incentives. That doesn't follow one from the other to me at all. What we should do is identify what are we doing differently than other cities in terms of barriers of entry and relieving those barriers of entry, and then identify policies that affect that address that directly. One of them undoubtedly is cost, but I'm sure it's not the only one.
Cost and the risk of development are the two major barriers to entry. When I say cost, it is development cost. Typically, the cost of development of a hotel in any major metropolitan area, whether it's Chicago, New York, San Francisco, or Los Angeles, is much higher than in suburban areas or exurban areas or rural areas. Development costs in Los Angeles are high. And in Los Angeles, the hotel room rates are not proportionally high enough to justify the development costs, that the cost of construction in LA, as they are in New York, for example, which is right now going through a building boom of hotels, but it's because the room rates are so high that they can support the cost of new development. San Francisco is in the same situation as Los Angeles, in that they're the other city in the United States besides LA that has had a 0.7% growth in supply over the last 25 years because of, again, room rates not high enough relative to construction cost. The other issue in Los Angeles is just the planning horizon and the timeline for development. When you undertake a hotel development in urban Los Angeles, there is certainly, we have a great planning process in terms of neighborhood input and community input and all those kinds of things, but they present risks to development. They present risks to the likelihood of development. They present risks to what can wind up being developed. They present risks to a timeline of development. And for that reason, there have been many developers around the country for years who have said, I like the Los Angeles market, but I could develop much easier in Phoenix or Dallas or Houston or Atlanta or other places, and so I'll put my risk there, even though the market's more volatile, because I know I have more certainty of what I can get done when.
So, if I may, time is money. Delays that people often identify in our development process have a real cost to developers.
Absolutely. Real cost at a risk of when you're going to come, because you have to get your construction ready to go at the time when the financing market is ready to finance it.
Right. So while an incentive is one approach that we can take to encourage more hotel development, an expedited planning process might be another approach. Maybe they're compatible, maybe they're not. But I just wanted to raise the issue that, and I think Mr. Weezer stated offhandedly an important point when he said if we go with a big incentive right now, we're going to catch as many as we can. Some of them we might catch anyway. That's an important thing, because the hotels that we're going to catch anyway that can withstand the delays, that feel that there's an appropriate return on investment, if we end up subsidizing them with as much as 100% TOT waiver, that's real money that's coming out of the budget that isn't being provided for other basic services, for our incumbent hotels, to make this a more attractive tourist market, and it creates a competitive disadvantage to the hotels that aren't getting it. So I just want to raise this issue, and I'm sorry I didn't get to give you haven't had a chance to respond yet to any of this.
Very clearly, there always is a little bit of concern when a particular group gets a subsidy and one's been around toting the bag for many, many years doesn't. It is a challenge. However, at the same time, recognize the greater good that other hotels serve in terms of more commerce into a particular city. So it's never a perfect balance, but we who have been here deal with it as well as we can.
So I guess to get to the bottom line on this, how do we know? How do we know that we have a policy? I mean, an essential part of this policy, and it's important, is that the developer demonstrate a funding shortfall, demonstrate that there's a need to bridge a gap and provide an economic analysis and so forth. But as the PKF study itself says, this is one of construction costs, one of many factors that have contributed to an average annual growth of 0.7%. So how do we know, number one, that by creating this incentive, we're going to impact those barriers of entry? And then conversely, how do we know that by creating this incentive, we're not subsidizing projects that don't need it? Because that's if we are doing that, then we are simply losing general fund revenue that benefits all hotel owners, all tourists, all residents of Los Angeles. That balance has to be as close to perfect as we can get it. And we have to know that we're getting the best possible deal from each project. Otherwise, this is bad policy. So how do we know that we're getting the best possible deal from each project?
Well, on the development cost side, as you noted, we do that fiscal feasibility analysis and scrub the costs for constructing the hotel, the land costs when appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a good idea of what those development costs are, whether they're appropriate or not. We have a good analysis of the expected fiscal impact on the city, what kinds of revenues would be generated by the project, and that helps us understand what we would provide to fill any kind of a gap in the development costs and the operation of the hotel over time. So I think the experience we have over the last several years in doing these deals, we've honed in on the analysis that addresses the development cost side. And so that's what we've been talking about. In terms of the entitlement risk, the planning risk, there have been efforts going back, decades to try and streamline, facilitate that process, and that's still ongoing at this point, to really get in and delve into the kinds of changes there that would help, that might be the barriers that are preventing the hotels from being built, and therefore we would not need to provide any economic incentive at all. I'm not an expert in that area. I haven't looked at that area and seen what kinds of entitlement reforms are proposed to be able to tell you right now whether that would make the difference and open up the floodgates without giving any money at all.
Yeah, and they're two sides of the same coin. So on the funding gap part, we get a pro forma. It says, lo and behold, there's a $25 million funding gap, and we need a subsidy to fill it. They do an economic analysis and says, yeah, that's true. I guess, how do we ascertain to our best satisfaction that we're not just getting sold a bill of goods?
Yeah.
How do we know that, every hotel project now knows that if they maximize their cost and minimize their projected revenues, they'll have a funding gap that they can then come and say, you need to subsidize me or else I'm going to Beverly Hills instead. When that decision might be based on factors entirely separate. There might be a clear return on investment for being next to the LA Convention Center or next to some other asset that makes it a good business decision for them to be there. My concern is, I'm giving you the most cynical questions that I can, with the understanding that I get the need for these hotels, and I absolutely, we do need these thousands of new hotel rooms around the convention center, and we have to get these hotels built. Just want to make sure we're going about it in a way that's not going to be subject to the criticism that we're subsidizing projects that don't need subsidies.
I can answer part of that. And having been the city's consultant in reviewing several of these proposals, JW Marriott, the Wilshire Grand, and so on, as part of our job in working with the city, with the CLA's office in scrubbing the proposals, was to review both their development costs and their design and frankly, its square footage. There were projects we worked on with the city, as John knows, where we went back to John, and he went back to the developer and said, what you're building is too opulent. It just doesn't make any sense, and you have to modify your plans. And that process has been going through, whether we've been the consultant, I know it's been going through when other consultants have been the city's consultant to this process. Part of the charge that the city's consultant is given, the city reviewer is given, is to review whether there is a funding gap, whether the costs are appropriate, whether the project is appropriate.
And that analysis of the appropriateness of the costs, part of that is look, not just they said this is what it's going to cost, and okay, well, that, finger to the wind, that seems nice, or seems right. I mean, there is review based on other experience in the development community of those costs.
And review with Marshall Evaluation Services, and it is actually costed out.
And then we always have a provision in the contract that once the whole project is completed, construction, we would go back and we review those development costs again to make sure that they were in line with what we expected they would be. If they, for some reason, had a significant saving in their development costs, we will go in and we will reduce the amount of subvention that's provided. So there are some checks and balances in that whole process.
Great. I have more, Mr. Chairman, but let me pass the microphone.
Thank you. Mr. Cedillo.
Continue, Bob.
Well, let's let the other members have a chance to chat, and then we can come back.
I share the same concerns, whether or not we're disadvantaging people who are already in place or disadvantaging others. So I share those concerns. I think we need to stay focused on what our goals are. It seems that we're moving towards greater incentives the closer you are to the convention center, the bigger you are. But I think there's some ways to think about that without creating disadvantage for others because we have such an incredible need. That's basically it, Paul. And I think that we need to mull this over, obviously, a lot more because I have more concerns about it. But like everyone, we're excited about saying to the world that we're open for business and we want to build convention hotels.
Councilwoman?
So my observation was, so it seems like under the new policy, the incentives for the convention center hotels would be harder. So if we can't build the hotel rooms now, what makes us think we're going to be able to do that if the incentives are harder to get?
Well, the incentives aren't necessarily harder to get. We're just...
It seems like they've been reduced, I should say.
We're saying that we're focusing our incentive on the product that is most important for the city, which is the largest hotels. at that convention center. In terms of other communities such as Hollywood, North Hollywood, East Valley, LAX, downtown, the streetcar zone, there are different thresholds. But it's just that immediate area from Pico to 7th, Alvarado to Broadway, where we say, look, we really need to focus our resources and hold our best incentives based on the most that we've ever provided before, the highest incentives that we've used before. Let's reserve that for that zone to make sure that we get the product that we need. And the product we need is hotels with 450 rooms or more. And once we get to a certain threshold of a total of 8,000 rooms in that zone, we'll wash away that restriction and we'll open it up so that the smaller hotels can come in and they can start filling in the need. Because really, we're trying to balance, we're trying to attract three really distinct types of visitors, right? There are leisure visitors who are going to be staying in North Hollywood because they're going to visit the Universal Studios. They're going to be staying in Hollywood. They're going to be staying in downtown. They're business travelers. The film industry business travelers might be staying in North Hollywood or Hollywood. They'll be staying, other financial incentive businesses, they'll be staying in downtown Los Angeles, right? We've got 2 incentive zones at the 2 regional airports at Burbank and at LAX. So there are different components there, but in all of that, we're saying we need to reserve our strongest incentive tool at the convention center. Now, again, based on historic practice, we've used 50% of net new revenue or 100% of TOT, whichever is lower. And so we started from there and we built the rest of the policy from there. If the committee and the council desires to change that and give us some instruction to go in a different direction, we would go do that work for you.
So, Mr. Huizar, what are you proposing to do moving forward?
Yeah, I'm proposing that we provide additional incentives to the top tier and leave the lower tier the same, as opposed to what's being proposed now, which is to leave the top tier the same and reduce the lower tier. Because I think simply just because we tell somebody, you can't do this now, so therefore you're going to do this, I don't think we're going to have the result we would like to see. And I have some ideas about what those numbers are, but these are just numbers in terms of the overall approach, which would be incentivize the higher tier more and keep the lower one the same. And you could play with those numbers. I just like to see a report back on this or any other ideas that I think we can do to incentivize hotels. And Mr. Kukarian was also heading in a different direction as well, which is a good one, which is the policy that we examined is pretty much the same when it came back to us. We want to be a bit more creative, perhaps, so there's some other expediting issues we could do, non-monetary things that there's value to that as well. To us, it's time. To the development, it's money in some of these expediting things. So we could just get creative on all that as well. But the numbers that I'd like for you to examine and come back to us when this comes back to us is that, number one, for a limited time of 3 years, we changed the convention center zone to A, hotels of 450 rooms or more that would allow 100% of TOT plus 20% of the remaining site-specific revenues for up to 35 years. And B, hotels of 600 rooms or more would allow 100% TOT plus 35% of the remaining site-specific revenues for up to 35 years, plus a waiver of the $5 a foot TFAR transfer fee. That's not the community benefits, but the transfer fee. And that would, I think, for 3 years, go quick, swift, and it's additional incentive. But we want to see what the impact for us would mean in terms of what are we giving up if, in fact, we do those. And second, for the entire duration of the program, which is the other tier, not just 3 years, hotels in the convention zone would allow of 200 rooms or more should receive 50% of all site-specific revenues or 100% of TOT for 30 years. And that's as opposed to 40% of all or 50% for 25 years that you have right now for the downtown zone. So I just like to see what that means. It's giving additional incentive for the bigger hotels and almost keeping the lower hotels the same as opposed to reducing them. But I think that might incentivize some to come in swiftly and quick. And if none of them take it, but I think we got to do more than what we're doing now. What we hear today is doing more of the same, which I don't think we're going to get the results we'd like to see. So if that could be examined, and/or anything else you have in mind that may work, we'd like to see that when this comes back.
Okay, thank you. I think it's clear we do want to send it back for some additional work. You've heard some very specific suggestions and some general comments, I think, that we want to take into consideration. We certainly want to achieve some balance. I think we all agree we want the hotel rooms. The question is at what cost? And as has been requested, we're anxious to try to identify some new creative and some out-of-the-box incentives that perhaps will help bring some boxes here. Members, any other just brief thoughts? I know that.
So, Mr. Chairman, is it the intention then that we'll hold this in committee and then have an additional report back in response and an economic analysis of Mr. Weezar's alternative suggestions?
Well, his alternative suggestions, and there have been some other proposals made that I think we want to incorporate into a report. So we'll hold it in committee and ask that you come back and.
So the other proposals that have been, the only other proposal that has been put forward is to take a look at the entitlement risk, or the entitlement costs and how that might be amended to facilitate the development. Are there any other ideas that you would like us, or concepts that you would like us to look at?
Well, one other concern I had, the downtown enhancement zone cuts at the 10 freeway, and I'd like to see how we can extend that boundary down to at least Adams, again, to encourage development around the Blue Line. We know at least one hotel project has already been announced right there on Washington Boulevard. I think we want to, again, just create the greatest opportunity for new development in that area.
Absolutely.
Mr. Price, I think that's a great idea because we have a transportation system there that would lend itself greatly to this, but in our own minds, in our own history of what we think of that area, we don't think of it as an area to create these types of economic areas. And I think we got to redo our thinking in terms of what we think about that area, which was one of the first above-ground rail lines in the city, modern ones that we constructed. So we got to rethink about that area. That's great.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, there's some questions I have about actual application and implementation of the policy, but I can deal with those offline. That's fine. If we're getting
we're going to come back.
Further analysis back, the other 2 points that I would ask be included would be some analysis of the Convention Sports and Leisure's comments in their peer review of the study relating to the time frame for the incentive. They said that 20 years may be longer than needed, particularly with the higher incentive, and so I'd like to hear some analysis of the pluses and minuses of the time frame, and also on the room size. They had a different view and actually recommended increasing the size for the room size for the larger. And on that, just keep in mind, we have multiple policies that we're trying to serve here. One is around the convention center, and I think you stated it well, Mr. Wickham, but significantly smaller hotels outside of that area might very well be an important policy to incentivize as well, particularly when we can steal business from surrounding cities.
Yes.
So those would be the two other elements I'd ask to be analyzed further as well.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you for your...
Well, we can talk, but we have an interest in we share an interest in expanding the zone. And then we have some gems in the area, like Park Plaza, that set themselves up to be prospects for rehab, and obviously we don't want to disadvantage anyone. I guess one of my central concerns is, are we disadvantaging other players in the market, either those who were there historically or those who can re-enter? And we don't want to disadvantage them.
As I mentioned, the restoration, the rehabilitation piece is really a troublesome component for me. If the city had experience doing those projects, I think that would be very helpful. If an example of one of those projects came forward, and your city staff were able to focus on one of those and build some experience in negotiations on that, identifying the economics of a rehabilitation as opposed to a new construction. I think that would be very helpful and very constructive and help inform where that policy goes. Just as a background, one other thing that's recommended, two things the way this is structured. This is structured as a policy. It's not structured as an ordinance. So the council, as appropriate, would be able to make revisions more directly and quickly, expediently. The other is that the policy recommends that a report back come in annually on this program and how it's functioning. So that annual reporting process would allow you to, again, make more changes to the program as it's operating and be more flexible in the way you're providing these incentives. And so again, something like a renovation project could go on a single project forward basis and then come back later with a bigger policy.
Can I make one more comment?
So when are you bringing this back to committee?
We're going to ask you to come back in 60 days.
60 days.
60 days.
Mr. Price, can I make one more comment as well?
You may.
Please? Just in terms of your concerns, Mr. Dilla and Mr. Krikorian, about disadvantaging existing hotels, in fact, a policy like this advantages existing hotels. And by that I mean as the market rises and as there's better quality hotels come into the market and as the market is more successful, other hotels can raise their room rates. Also, other hotels have the ability to invest money in renovating the project. The entrance, again, of the JW Marriott Ritz-Carlton at LA Live, in the year that it opened, the downtown hotels, other hotels, average daily room rate went up $10. And 3 hotels have started on major renovations downtown since that time because they see the opportunity to be upgraded.
Good. Thank you. Well, there's opportunity for all, and we want to make sure that our hotel developers and entrepreneurs take advantage of it and that they benefit their projects and the city as well. And that's our objective in coming up with a policy and a process that does that. It's fair, transparent, and effective. So thank you for your testimony. We'll ask you to come back in 60 days with a update reflecting the comments you've heard and suggestions that have been made. Okay? Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 5.
Item number 5 is a CLA report relative to authorization to execute an MOU between the City of LA and Greenland LA Metropolis Hotel Development, LLC, concerning terms of the agreements necessary to provide a revenue participation agreement to close the financing gap for the Metropolis Hotel Development project.
John Wickham with the CLA. This report is in response to request that we evaluate the economic condition of the proposed hotel in the Metropolis project. And our consultant, Kaiser Marston Associates, was retained to prepare that analysis. They looked at the feasibility of the project, the potential gap, revenues that would be generated by the project for the city. And our determination was that there is, if I could find these numbers real quick in here, there's a feasibility gap of $70.4 million in the project. And this one was a little complicated in that it's the phase 1 of the project has both a hotel and a residential project, a residential tower. The developers indicated that they've already started. They had a groundbreaking. They've done some, and they're prepared to do some grading and excavation at the project site. They had indicated that there was an interest in. Would have done a residential tower if they had not chosen to do, or in response to city request, chosen to do a hotel. And so the gap that is provided in this analysis is actually based on the difference between building a second residential tower and building a hotel. Because it was likely that they definitely would have continued with the project one way or the other. So the gap is really focused on what the alternatives were. The gap in the difference between the hotel construction and the residential tower is $13.5 million. Now, this is a project that was focused on, that was being evaluated in the context of the hotel incentive policy that you just reviewed. Under that hotel incentive policy that's proposed, they would have received the citywide incentive of 25% net new revenue or 40% of TOT. If those numbers change as had been proposed, they might be eligible for a little bit more. But regardless, the gap is $13.5 million on this project. And so our recommendation, based on our, the information that we had available when we drafted the report, was to recommend that we move forward with negotiation of the final revenue sharing agreements with the developer, recognizing the subvention of $13.1 million toward the gap, which is 25% of the net new revenue estimated to be generated by the project. Kaiser Marston is here to answer any questions you may have on the feasibility analysis of the project, the economic analysis they could prepare.
Thank you. Mr. Weezer.
Thank you. So the developer in this case wanted to build residential, and the city needed hotels, so we asked them to build a hotel, correct? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And would we be getting a hotel at all if it weren't for the subsidy, or would we be getting more residential here, in your opinion? Report.
I don't know.
Well, they wanted to build residential, right? They came with a proposal to build 4 residential units, and we wanted a hotel, so we suggested to them to build a hotel, and they did. So, but for the city assistance, it would be 300 rooms further behind a hotel goal for downtown, correct?
350 rooms is their proposed
350
hotel.
rooms, yeah. And because but for this assistance, there would not be a hotel here. How much revenue is expected to come from this project in the forecasting we've done?
Yeah, the total estimated revenues from the project gross is $156.7 million, or 52.5 net present value.
That's over what time period?
25 years.
Over 25 years. And so we are supporting them with $13 million, and we are forecasting that we will get back in return about $156 million.
Yeah.
Okay. And these are all my questions, but colleagues, I support this project. Greenland came in with some huge ambition, large vision, and we appreciate that. They're building 4 high-rises in an area in a site that has been vacant for many years under potential litigation in the past, and they've fixed a lot of that and are moving forward. They originally had planned to build residential. We asked for hotels because of our need for more hotels. They worked with us in doing that, and I think the numbers speak for themselves here in terms of the return we will get for the small investment we make. But for this assistance, they would rather build residential, which is more profitable for them.
Yes.
So this gap that they exist is because we are asking them to do the hotel. So I think it's good policy, and I ask that we support this. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we've got several cards. Let's take the cards. And James of Elmendorf, Lane, Carol Schatz, Frank Lopez from the Chamber, and Ron Miller, and asking you all to limit your testimony to 1 minute, please.
Good afternoon. James Elmendorf from Los Angeles Alliance for a New Economy, here today to support the Metropolis project and the city moving forward on this agreement. This project, as I think everyone knows, has been in the works for a number of years. We've supported it, both Lane and Unite Here Local 11, in our efforts and the city's efforts to make it happen. We think it's a good step forward today. As all of the council members have recognized, there is an essential need to develop new hotels downtown. This will serve as a convention-serving hotel and serve the vital city needs to help attract more convention business. It will also provide for good jobs for both construction workers and for hotel workers. There is in place a commitment on the part of the developer to recognize the rights of workers to organize freely. Thank you very much, and we encourage your support.
Thank you.
Carol Schatz, President of Central City Association. We support Councilman Weezar's comments on this. I personally have watched this plot of land for 20 years. It's been entitled and re-entitled, etc. And it's time to move forward. This is the time. We think this is a reasonable proposal. It's important to fill in all the gaps downtown. We want to see more condominium product in downtown. Right now, everything that's going up is rental. It's great that we have such a hot housing market, and they are doing something that they did not want to do, so the subvention is very important. We urge your support for this project.
Thank you.
Frank Lopez, LA Chamber of Commerce. I echo Carol's comments. We support this project. We think it have a positive impact on the economy and create much needed jobs. And as a resident of downtown LA, I'm also very excited to see this project come online as well.
I didn't know that.
Ron Miller with the LA Orange County Building Trades urge you to support this subvention agreement. This was a plot of land that's been, the last few times it's came out, it's always condos or apartments, and I think the councilman did a good job in convincing them or twisting their arms, whatever he had to do to get them to build this hotel. And we all agree today that we need more hotel rooms here. So please approve the subvention agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Okay, members, any other comments? Do you have a motion? Do you have a question?
I have one question. I think this is, and it seems that this is an example of what we were talking about earlier, where you see a clear return on investment that would not take place but for this agreement. And I think Mr. Weezer laid that out very well with the one clarification that the $13 million is the net present value.
Yes.
So you'd have to compare that with the net present value of the benefits of it. So it's not quite a 10-to-1 return on investment, but it's about a 3-to-1 return on investment, which is still a darn good investment, I think, that will have residual effects. The one question I have is the report indicates that there was a $50-some million funding gap if they were to choose the residential project.
Yes.
So how then was that ever going to get built? I guess I don't get, if you have that big of a funding gap, how is it a feasible project under any circumstances?
Yeah, I don't know. Bring Kaiser Marston up. They prepared the feasibility analysis. They might have some thoughts on that.
That's a very good question.
I try to choose them carefully.
Jim Raby, Senior Principal with Kaiser Marston and Associates. This is a multi-phase project, and so I'm going to give you two partial rationales that probably go together, and there are probably some others, and you probably would need to direct the question to the developer rather than us. But on multi-phase projects, it is not unusual for the first phase and the first two phases to be negative, and then you make it up on the later phases of the project. The other point that's specific to this project is this is Greenland's first project in, I believe, in the United States, or at least on the West Coast. And it's not unusual, again, for a developer trying to get their foot into the marketplace to take much lower returns on a project than they might otherwise. We have to look at it in terms of looking at projects as a typical developer would undertake it. So the combination of those two probably makes up most of the difference, that they'll make it up at the end, that Greenland's probably taking a somewhat lower return on this project than somebody else would to get their foot in the door, and then they may have some of their own specific reasons.
Another factor for us to take into account when we're crafting citywide policy. But for this project, it certainly seems like it's a good return on investment.
Yes.
So if there was a motion, I would say.
There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Approving the report as presented.
Thank you.
So that will be the order. Thank you. Okay, last item, item 6.
Item number 6 is a CLA report relative to approval of the Grand Avenue Hotel and Parking Revenue Participation Agreement.
Mr. Administrator.
It's all hotels all the time for me. John Wickham with CLA's office. Before you is the rebirth of the Grand Avenue Parcel Q project. The council had acted on this back in 2007, 2008, approved a subvention agreement, and then the economy did a trick on us, and the Parcel Q wasn't able to move forward. The Grand Avenue Authority actually has responsibility for 4 parcels up on Bunker Hill, 2 of them owned by the CRA, 2 owned by the county, and it was a joint county-city authority that came together with the CRA to put together a big development concept for these 4 parcels. The parcel Q was the prime parcel immediately across the street from from the Walt Disney Hall. The project previously had residential component, a hotel, and retail. The hotel brand identified was the Mandarin Oriental, which is a 5-star hotel. Generates its own business. People travel the world to go to just Mandarin Oriental hotels. But as I said, the economy took a turn in 2008. Everything kind of came to a halt. The 2 city parcels actually found development opportunities and moved forward. There's a residential tower that's near completion on one of those parcels, and then the Broad Museum is on a second one of those parcels. Those are the 2 city parcels. The 2 remaining parcels are county parcels, Parcel Q and Parcel W2, I believe it is. The proposal here is to reinvigorate Parcel Q, again moving forward with a residential component, a hotel, and residential. There's a plaza in front of the project that faces the Walt Disney Hall. So there are lots of interactive, programming opportunities on the district there. As a legacy project, the city already has a contract with Related, so we performed a new economic analysis on the redesign project, but using the terms from the project as originally proposed and originally evaluated by the council back in 2007, 2008. It didn't seem fair to renege on that. So the policy here, the program here and the policy here is basically the policy that the council had adopted previously. There are 2 significant changes in here, and they affect the amount of subvention that is being proposed. The first change, the city, your city team required that the revenue that the county of Los Angeles participate in the subvention for this project. This is a joint city-county project. The county has been a key driver on the design components of the project. And so when we came back on this, we required that the county participate in the funding assistance that's provided. On the other hand, the developer requested that the term be changed from 20 years to 25 years for an opportunity to generate revenue to assist in the development of the project. So what you have before you is the analysis prepared by RSG and PKF. It identifies a funding gap of $162.9 million, of which $101.3 million is as a result of the hotel. And a significant part of the gap is related to design costs associated with the project and the architecture. The assistance that we recommend is actually to provide $47.3 million net present value for the project. That is 81% of the TOT. And the way we arrived at that is we looked at all of the revenue, the net new revenue generated by the city, or that the city would receive, all of the net new revenue that the county would receive, and we determined a proportionate share from each agency. So it turns out the city of Los Angeles, out of all the net new revenue generated by the project, the city of Los Angeles would receive 81% and the county would receive 19%. And so our recommendation is that we provide a base amount of 47.3, which is 81% of the TOT. And we are encouraging the developer and we are encouraging the county to return with the remaining 19%, which is $10.9 million, which would generate $58.3 million in total assistance for this project. We've gone so far as to say and suggest and recommend to you that if the county provides more than $10.9 million, that we would provide more as well, maintaining that ratio of 81 and 19. So, and we would go up to 58.3, which is the total TOT generated by the project. So effectively, if the county came up to roughly 13 point something million dollars, we would provide $58.3 million, and they would have a total benefit for the project to fill their gap. So it's a little more complicated, but it it helps fill the gap that has been identified for the project.
Okay, we've got several cards. Let's take the cards and we'll come back. Deborah Cantor. Got you this time. James, 1 minute, please.
I'm sorry.
I said we're asking everyone to adhere to 1 minute. No, please, but don't leave.
For 1 minute.
You can speak, though. You don't have to leave in a minute. Just James, Elmendorf, Pam Berman, and Howard Sherman. Madam, alas.
All right, I'm still the general counsel for the Broad Foundation, for the moment at least. And I'm reading a statement from Mr. Broad, who could not be here. I was the founding chairman of the Grand Avenue Committee when it was formed in 2001 and was involved in the earliest conversations between the city and county about the development of Grand Avenue back in 1999. The City Council and County Board of Supervisors had the foresight to recognize the potential of an integrated residential, retail, and civic development to bring together this region in a vibrant city center in the heart of downtown Los Angeles. We have seen the tremendous boon the first stage of this development, Grand Park, has been to our community in the 2 years since it opened. Now, with the Broad under construction and set to open next year, and the opening this fall of our adjacent public plaza and Related's apartment tower, the Emerson, Related is on track to complete development of the Grand Avenue project and realize this vision we had more than a decade ago. The transient occupancy tax rebate is a critical incentive for this development, and the Grand Avenue project is a critical development for this region. The TOT rebate was approved by the City Council in 2007 when the original plans called for a Mandarin Oriental hotel. Related has secured an equally high-quality hotel in SLS, and the same economic considerations that led the Council to approve the TOT rebate are even more relevant today. I urge the City Council to approve the TOT rebate for Related and continue your visionary support of the Grand Avenue project. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Elmendorf, again from Lane. As I said before, all of the things that were said about the earlier project are true. This is certainly a great project that will help benefit the city's need for more hotel rooms. I think there are a couple of additional things to say. Obviously, this is a vision that, as the earlier speaker just mentioned, has been in place for a long time to really reshape and remake downtown. There are a whole lot of elements that have been working to move forward. It's very exciting that we are taking this step to get this part of the project moving forward. SLS is a great partner. They are a partner both to hotel workers. The SLS Hotel over on the west side is a unionized hotel, but I think they're also a very attractive and exciting brand that has been growing across the country. So we think the city's getting a really good hotel partner here and a really great anchor to helping remake downtown. The commitments that Related has made have really come through, and we're glad to see the city, and we hope the city will move forward on its commitments as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Howard Sherman. I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the Music Center, and I'm here to support the Grand Avenue project and urge you to reaffirm the city's contributions to make the project a reality. Grand Avenue project is transforming downtown. It continues to transform downtown, and at the Music Center we sort of have two entrees into this, one being the operation of Grand Park, which, as Deborah said, in 2 years has been an amazing addition to the downtown landscape, both as a destination as well as support of a neighborhood. And Related did that based on the agreement at its expense during the economic downturn, and it's been a huge benefit to all of us. The second piece would be Parcel Q, which is what we're talking about, which is right across the street from the Music Center's Walt Disney Concert Hall, and having that plaza open up to the concert hall and finishing that piece and connecting it to the other arts institutions and all the way down to the downtown business district can't be underestimated. I'll also give a plug for Frank Gehry. Having a fully realized Frank Gehry design on both sides of the street shouldn't be underestimated what that'll do to downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Berman? Okay. Tina Choi? Bill Woody? Ben Jesus? Cindy Starrett?
Thank you. Tina Choi representing SBE. I'm here to give some comments relative to SBE and the origin of the Sls Hotel Brand. And nothing against the CLA office's comments, but the hotel brand that we bring to this project is actually infinitely better than the Mandarin Oriental. Because SLS was actually founded in our city of Los Angeles, and it was founded by Sam Nazarian and part of the Nazarian family, who has a very extensive history of philanthropy and dedication to this great city. And Sam's vision for SLS and bringing Philippe Stark and amazing chef Jose Andreas was to really designate and brand LA as a destination, global destination city. And he always said, we are better than Paris, we're better than New York, and we have to make this city recognizable to the world. And so this is part of his vision to really bring SLS. Now, SBE Entertainment is 52 venues worldwide with 10 SLS hotels planned for China, one in South Beach, one in New York, Philadelphia, Seattle, San Francisco. So we're really excited to bring this brand into downtown LA and continue the Nazarian's family vision of philanthropy, community benefits, and really continuing to brand our great city as a global destination.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Hi, Bill Whitty, President of Related California. We've been working on the Grand Avenue project now for over 10 years, and even with the worst recession in memory, we never wavered in our commitment. As coming out of the recession, we donated or arranged for the land for the Broad Museum to proceed. We're almost complete with a mixed-income apartment tower next to the Broad, and as you've heard, we paid for and developed Grand Park, which, because of the Music Center and others, has been a huge success. Working with Frank Gehry, we have a design plan that can really realize that vision, the most ambitious vision I think we've seen for downtown. And I certainly second all of Tina's comments about the SLS, and they will be a partner of ours, not just an operator. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge that throughout this process, we've had total support of the city council, and the community, and we are very grateful for that. I'd particularly like to thank Councilman Huizar, who, as a member of the JPA representing the city, supported us through these more difficult times and, frankly, has enabled us to continue to try to realize our vision. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Good afternoon. Bee Shu, Senior Vice President with Related California. Just wanted to spend another minute on the public benefits package for Grand Avenue, which by any standards are very robust. The project will create over 9,500 jobs and nearly $500 million in new revenues to the city and the county over the next 25 years. Some of the public benefits we've already realized and are already contributing to the life of downtown and to the city, like Grand Park, which has become a cultural and civic destination. I think you're all familiar with it from being right next door, and also it was the home to the city's inauguration ceremonies last year. The Broad Contemporary Art Museum, currently under construction on one of the CRA sites, is going to make one of the world's finest collections of modern art available free to the public, thanks to the generosity of Mr. Broad. Affordable housing is another key component, with 20% affordable in each phase. With the decline of the city's housing trust fund, that's very significant for downtown, where there's few of these projects. Their jobs will be high-quality union jobs, living wage jobs, and local hiring jobs, with card check neutrality on the hotel, project labor on the construction, and local hiring and living wage applying to the entire project. Thank you for your continued support.
Thank you.
Council members, I'm Cindy Starrett from Latham & Watkins. I'm here on behalf of Related, and we very much appreciate your time and that of the city staff and the CLA. They've worked very hard on this project. The Joint Powers Authority requires us to come back with a memorandum of understanding in July, so that's why we also appreciate that you're acting today on this MOU. The staff noted that we have a $100 million gap for the hotel. There's also $140 million of net new revenue to the city because we have sales tax from the retail. We have all kinds of benefits from this project. One of the things that isn't reflected in those benefits are the affordable housing and many of the other public policy items that have already been provided for this project. So our only ask for you is that this range, the $47 million to the $58 million, and the contribution of others to this project be something that people continue to think about after you act today. What is the value of affordable housing? What are the benefits of the park to the city? And have a broader look at the project as a whole and not just project Parcel Q before the final documents are all entered into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next panel, Carol Schatz, Russ Brown.
And we're just submitting a letter for the record.
Okay, Brady Westwater, Frank Lopez, and Ron Miller.
Carol Schatz, President of Central City Association. This is another parcel that I've been looking at for a long time. And this project began 10 years ago. We are very excited as a community to see it finally moving forward with an extraordinary design of Frank Gehry, with the enormous contributions that Related has already made in terms of their almost $60 million contribution to the park, the low-income, mixed-income housing that they've talked about. The deal they signed was a deal that everyone agreed to in 2007, and we're not only supporting the project, but asking you to confirm that deal and provide the agreement and recognize that agreement that was made so that this project finally can go forward as downtown explodes.
Thank you.
Russell Brown, speaking on behalf of myself and also for Patty Berman of the Neighborhood Council. As I've said, we've worked closely with Related Group for almost 10 years. It's hard to imagine that before the Downtown Art Walk and before Pete's Cafe, this project was in the formation phase. But it's literally taken that long. We have been an enthusiastic partner in supporting Related as they've gone through the many design changes. I think you can see the success of the Grand Avenue Park. Related Group and the Guggenheim Museum, the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao single-handedly has changed Spain and the way that art and architecture and economic development go together. With the Broad Museum, Disney Concert Hall, and this new project, we'll have a similar effect here in downtown.
Thank you.
Ron Miller, LA Orange County Building Trades. I just want to speak in support of this project. We could start thanking a lot of people for the Grand Avenue project, and we'd be here all day. But Related Companies has always been there. Everything they've done up on Grand Avenue has been under project labor agreement with local hire. We've created a lot of new careers up there at a time when the economy was in the tank. They seen fit to start their projects, and they've kept many building trades craftsmen and women up there working. So I urge you to reaffirm the city's commitment to this project and move it forward so we can get building on this next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Frank?
Still Frank Lopez, still with the LA Chamber of Commerce, still in strong support for this project. Support the agreement as well. I want to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any comments?
I was out of the room when it was...
I'm sorry. What was your name, sir?
My name is Brady Westwater.
Yes.
I've been involved with Bunker Hill since we helped save the two buildings they were bulldozing in the 1960s on junior high school, and since 2000 I've been actively involved in the revitalization of Grand Avenue. And I just hope the city, and I expect it will fulfill its commitment with Related. Related has gone through this project without any revenue whatsoever. They built the park. A lot of people would have walked away. I can understand why you chose them now. They were the people with the deep pockets and the commitment to the community who would stay the course. And I hope the city will do the same. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Members, any comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to make clear for the record as well that the numbers we're giving how much of a subsidy?
The base amount is, 47 point something.
47 point something. And
Yes.
the county is giving how much?
The county has, to date, said that they would not provide anything.
Okay.
We are, in our agreements, keeping the door open with the conversation is our intent.
But this is the first time we've actually suggested to the county that they also partake with us. Have there been other possibilities where they could have?
We've never had a joint city-county project like
That
this.
there was one or two others that we did something similar.
No. This is the first one I know of.
All right, and what is our forecast in terms of our returns to the city?
Other
In Gregorian terms, net present value, if we could...
Yeah, the total net new revenues, oh no, I'm sorry, I've got the wrong report in front of me. The total net new revenues on this one are estimated at $407.2 million. So that's nominal over 25 years. So it's a significant amount of money.
And so, I don't know, we have to do the calculation but for the net present value, but it's still a hefty return for the investment we make,
yes,
correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so we are just here continuing some agreements that were made prior, and there have been other contributions made by the developer, such as the Grand Park, in anticipation that this type of deal will be executed in the near future, correct? Is that accurate?
For example, for that example specifically, the $50 million payment was the land lease payment to the county for the project, and that was made a number of years ago. And so that was actually discounted in the fiscal analysis here, because that's a sunk cost.
Okay.
But there are some, I understand that there are some other revenues that the county has indicated that they've provided to the project. We haven't looked at those. They may be components of a county contribution.
Yeah. I've been sitting on the JPA, and as this has been moving forward, I've recognized that there's been support from both the county and the city, but it seems on this one we needed to get some clarification as well. So I wanted to ask that we do move this forward, because the benefits do outweigh the cost to us in terms of committing and fulfilling commitments we made back in 2007, and it fulfills our policy that but for this subsidy, it wouldn't be created. But at the same time, we need some clarification as to how much the county has actually contributed. So if you could come back to us, I'd like to move that we approve this today, but we add a report back that upon the full execution of the MOU and the Fourth Amendment DDA, that the chief legislative analyst be directed to work with the county, the developer, and Council District 14 to analyze and quantify the public benefits provided by the project, as well as the type and amount of financial assistance that has been provided by the city, the county, the CRA, and the JPA, and report back to the Economic Development Committee in 90 days. This is really to address the discussions we've been having with the county in that they have suggested that they've supported in certain ways, and we have suggested that it hasn't been clear whether that was the JPA or the city, so we just want to clarify that last piece for the county and get that information.
Could I suggest that we bring that back with the final definitive documents, so that would be part of the final negotiated revenue sharing agreement with the developer, and we would absolutely look at those other contributions from the county that you are indicating.
Okay, thank you.
Although, based on the public comments that were provided, we may have missed something in the analysis of the SLS hotels, and maybe we need to go back and take a look. I'm joking. I didn't make any comments on the SLS hotel in my initial comments. That actually is a game changer in the design for the project. They bring a suite of restaurants to the project, as well as the quality of hotel that is significant for this project, and that was one of the components that we looked at here.
Okay,
For the record, that was Mr. Broad's comment, I think, but actually I'm sure he thinks very highly of SLS as well. Yes. I'm guessing.
Did you have a...
Just that we're clear, so we're moving forward. This is whatever you work out with the counties, we're not conditioned on that we should express our commitment to move this project today.
Right, a deal's a deal, and I think we want to approve the recommendation that's presented. There are some report backs that we'll receive with the final document.
So moved.
So if I just want to put this in the simplest terms that I'm capable of understanding. So the deal was made back in the day, 2007, 2008, to provide revenue sharing in order to get this project done. Project didn't get done because of the downturn in the economy and so on. At that time, they would have been eligible for up to $58.2 million in assistance from the city under the policy then at the time.
Back then, I believe it was $60 million, and so in the reanalysis of the project, that number is actually come down a little bit.
So we're providing less than the amount that they would have been entitled to at that time.
Yes.
consistent with the agreement that they relied upon in investing in Grand Avenue Park and all the other things that they've done since then.
Yes.
Right? So, I agree that first of all, as the chair aptly said, I mean, a deal is a deal. And I think it would detract terribly from the city's credibility in making any kind of an arrangement with any segment of the business community if we reach an agreement on a major project for a transformation of downtown Los Angeles and then redo that agreement after a business has invested its own revenues and its own assets in making that project happen. So I don't know whether it was the best deal at the time or not. I wasn't here, but it was what was negotiated, and it appears now that even on the recommendation that's before us, there's a significant positive return on investment, and it will encourage the expedited construction of a transformative project. So I think it seems like a very good proposal.
Okay, any other comment? And we will accept the report as presented and look forward to your final report. No other business, members. This meeting is adjourned.